Greetings from Choice Equity Broking. Today we are diving into a topic that affects everyone's wallet, that is inflation and interest rate. First, let's talk about inflation. Inflation is the rate at which the general level of price for goods and services rises, which means your money buys less over time. There are three main types of inflation. First one is demand pull inflation, second one is built-in inflation, and the third one is cost push inflation. Inflation is measured by indexes like consumer price index and producer price index. These indexes tracks the average change over time in the prices paid by the consumers and producers. Next, here comes the effects of inflation. First one is erosion of purchasing power, second one is uncertainty, and third one is interest rates. So, what is this interest rate? Interest rate are the cost of borrowing money, typically expressed as an annual percentage of the principal. There are two main types of interest rate. First one is real interest rate and the second one is nominal interest rate. Now, let's explore how inflation impacts interest rates. Do you know central banks use interest rates as a tool to control inflation? Here is how it works. The relationship between interest rate and inflation is critical. The central banks like Federal Reserve use interest rates to control inflation. If the inflation is high, central banks may increase the interest rates to cool down the economy. Conversely, if the inflation is low or the economy is sluggish, the central banks may lower rates to encourage borrowing and spending. Next, here comes the flowchart of the cycle. Whenever the economy is contracting, the central bank cuts the interest rate and so the economy expands, which leads to increased inflation, which in turn leads the central bank to hike the interest rate and the economy contracts and the cycle goes on. The chart below depicts the interconnected relationship between interest rate and inflation. The red line in the chart indicates the federal funds rate and blue line in the chart indicates the inflation rate. So from this chart, from the year 2008 to 2014, the Fed rate remains unchanged in the percentage of 0.25, whereas the inflation rate was volatile. From 2015 to 2018, the Fed rate was increased from 0.25% to 2.50%. The inflation is also increased, which leads to the expansion in the business. From 2019 to 2021, Fed rate was low due to the pandemic, and in 2020 there was a contraction in the business cycle and the inflation rate is also low. From 2021 to 2023, the inflation rate decreased from 7% to 3.40%, whereas the Fed rate increased from 0.25% to 5.50%, and the business cycle was expanded. In the year 2021, the inflation rate was high with 7% and the Fed rate was 0.25%, whereas the business cycle was expanded 5.8%. To wrap things up, interest and inflation are deeply interconnected. When inflation is high, central banks may increase the interest rates to cool the economy and stabilize the prices. Conversely, when the inflation is low, they may lower the rates to encourage the growth. Understanding this relationship is crucial for making informed financial decisions, whether you are running a business or managing personal finances. Thank you. This is Emma signing off.